Okay, so what do they suggest you do?
Um, they kind of think I should pick something harder next time. It was not that it was anything wrong with it, but that was kind of an easy one. An important job for sure, but I think I might be ready for um, a new challenge.
And what do you choose?
I don't know. It seems like something more directly related to the polarity problem.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do this. Let's move into that lifetime where you're going to directly help with the polarity problem.
Hmm.
And now you're there. Tell me about that.
Well, it's still in the fourth density strata.
Okay.
Um, and I think I have some continuity of recollection of other lifetimes in fourth density, so I'm not completely kind of wiped. But before I hadn't paid much attention to kind of the uglier aspects of the polarity experiment, but now I'll be facing them directly. Different civilizations that are just not nice, that kind of have to be dealt with in a certain way. That's unfortunate, but it's not like you can talk them out of being negative polarity.
Okay. So what do you do to these civilizations that you can't talk out of negative polarity?
Well, some of it has to do with containment, because eventually they'll just be taken care of by, I guess, the galactic consciousness, or maybe even higher up than that. But then if there are other, we have to contain it and kind of have skirmishes against, kind of interloping forces that want to try to cause more problems, while we're really just trying to clean up the issue now. We're no longer interested in seeing what polarity produces. So they might have to be neutralized.
Okay. Well, how do you contain a civilization? Tell me about that.
Well, in order to even exist where you are, your energy has to be compatible with the surrounding energy. Think of it as the vibration or frequency. And so a layer of a certain frequency can be placed around an entire planet, let's say, and you just can't, it's kind of self-regulating. If you're a nasty individual, you're not going to be able to pass through a barrier that's essentially made of love. I don't know, either you might bounce back or you might be completely disintegrated. I'm not going to try to find out if I'm one of those individuals, but ultimately, while it takes a fair amount of active energy to establish and maintain, it actually works pretty well, because then if you are compatible with that energy, then no problem, you just pass right through.
Okay. And how many planets do you think you've done this to?
At this point, it's kind of late in the game, getting close to wrapping it all up, but there are probably 100 or so planets where this operation is continuing for containment and a little bit of kind of hunting out pockets that are hiding maybe on a positive world, still trying to do their thing.
Okay. And when these pockets hide on a positive world, what thing are they doing?
Well, at this point on most worlds, they can't really exist on the surface because of the energies that are changing naturally. So they kind of have to stay underground, but they use other means of trying to exert influence for themselves, including enlisting people from that world to do bad things for them, or just inciting negativity so that they can, because they have to feed energy. They have to feed on the type of energy that they need, and so for that to occur, they need for there to be pain and suffering and so forth in their proximity that they can witness. So that's kind of, it doesn't seem that interesting, but I mean, that's how they survive at this point, so that's what they're going to keep trying to do until the end.
Okay, so as you're doing all of this, are you in a physical form or are you just an entity?
I'm in physical form.
Okay, so what are you moving around in?
Kind of a faster ship than the science ship, and it's got some cool energy weapon type things needed to neutralize other fourth density negative ships and beings and things.
Well, okay. And what does your body look like?
This time it's kind of skinnier and longer and blue, and kind of longer fingers. Everything's kind of elongated and
Okay.
blue.
How many fingers on your hand?
3 and a thumb.
Okay. And do they have anything on the fingertips, or are they just regular fingers?
It looks almost like an octopus suction at each tip.
Okay. All right. And what about your head? Do you have any kind of hair, or what does your facial features look like?
No hair, but kind of a head that kind of reveals the contours of the brain, and kind of a plainer face, but not without personality. Just a little more, I don't know, something.
All right. And do you have a mouth and a nose?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what do you think you eat? What do you feed your body?
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty generic, and it's easiest just to deliver energy directly through technology. It's not really, eating isn't really a thing in itself.
Okay. All right. So you're just making sure your body stays energized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Let's do this. Let's move to a point where you're having to use your energy weapons against a negative craft or entity or something, where you have to use these weapons you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're there. Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. There's someone on the ship who tries to communicate with them. There's a negative ship just trying to run a blockade. I think maybe they were on one world, one positive world, and they're trying to run through to maybe another one. They're not in one of the quarantined worlds. But nonetheless, they are detected, and we're in the process of intercepting. And there's someone on our ship who's probably still physical, but really more like it's higher density somehow. Maybe like they're an ascended consciousness kind of a person, but they're in charge of talking to them, making contact with the negative ship to see if there's any room for help and negotiation, and helping them come to the light and all that. But we don't really expect it most of the time for them to want to comply. In fact, I never even heard of it happening personally. But then the negative ship will either keep running or try to maneuver and fight back. But we have sufficient firepower to neutralize them pretty easily. And it's a little sad because, unfortunately, the way the weaponry works, there's not any kind of recovery of the negative souls. It's all just kind of dispersed. That's just it. I'm not sure what the term for it is, but they're erased.
Okay, so they're overpowered and realigned?
Yeah, recycled.
Okay, all right. So, this ship that's running, do you fire on it?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What does that look like?
Well, after communications person has decided that we've done our, moral effort to talk to them, and the negative entities have rejected assistance, then we just kind of turn off the communication and power up just an overwhelming pulse of bright energy that really just disintegrates the whole negative ship very quickly and easily.
Okay. And can you see this bright thing shoot out?
Yeah, it shoots out of an array on our ship.
Okay. What color is it?
It's mostly white with a hint of gold.
Okay. And as you watch it impact the ship, what does that look like?
Well, the light the light washes out anything you can see of the negative ship, and it gets very bright, and there's no ship anymore, and the energy disperses too.
Okay.
There's no fire or debris or wreckage or anything.
Okay. And how many times do you think you've had to do this?
It's a little bit unusual. But this might be the fourth time.
Okay. And why do you think none of the ships want to heed the call to turn to the light?
Well, I don't know exactly, but it seems like it's just not in their makeup. It's kind of probably a flaw in the polarity idea that the tendency is to kind of double down on the negativity. There's not a point where a negative entity decides this is too much, this is too painful, there's too much everything. Even though it feels bad, they just double down on it, and they're essentially lost.
Okay. So they travel so far from the light they can't find their way back to it?
Right. And wouldn't even want to find their way back.
Okay. All right. So as you're doing this, how do you feel the process is? And you said you're wrapping it up now, so you're just, running around looking for pockets of this stuff?
Yeah, it's kind of business as usual, and other higher density collectives are monitoring the overall calculation, what the collateral damage would be, how much energy is needed, and they're just kind of waiting. They kind of want to wait as long as possible. In fact, some people are kind of wondering if it even has to happen at all. The final pulse that realigns everything. It seems if it might be possible that it's not even necessary. But if things suddenly go back, regress, then they might pull the trigger now. But they kind of want to wait and see how things go, just to make the impact as less as possible.
When you say impact, what's the impact?
Well, apparently, especially for those who have a mix of polarities in their individual energy systems, there can be some trauma associated with the sudden realignment. I think they survive. I don't think they're recycled, but there can be some trauma. So, and it's even better if individuals conquer the negative polarity within themselves anyway. It's more beneficial in the long term for their own learning and progress. But then again, maybe the big pulse will just be, good to have, and then it's done, and then they can come up with some other fun experiment that hopefully isn't as much of a debacle or whatever. Or maybe it will be. Maybe that's cool too.
Okay. All right. Let's move again to a time where something important is happening in that lifetime. And now you're there. Tell me about that.
Well, they're doing the galactic pulse. And from our vantage, we can see, we're zoomed way, way out. We can see not the whole galaxy, but maybe a third of the galaxy, including the center, from where we are. And sure enough, it's pretty spectacular, but as it moves its way out to the periphery of the galaxy, it's doing what it's doing. Even certain stars are being affected in a certain way. I guess there can be negative polarity within a star, not just individuals. And well, actually, no, that wouldn't make sense. Well, for some reason, it's affecting the stars in different ways too, creating a bit of a show. Like some of them flare up as the pulse reaches them, as others don't, and they change colors. Some can't really see anything from this vantage down at the planetary and individual level, but I'm sure we'll get reports. We don't really want to be in harm's way. We don't have any negative polarity on the ship, even though we'll have to have our own healing process because of the unnecessary aspects of going around blasting life, even though it's kind of a place of necessity and place of justice. There's some healing needed from that, but we have our own arrangement. We don't need to just fly into the source energy pulse for realignment.
Okay. All right. So, a star has a system consciousness, and if the polarity is inside the system consciousness, it would have some physical manifestations of the star itself. So that tracks.
Okay.
Okay. So the pulse is done. What happens next?
Well, for those of us who still have significant time left in these physical incarnations, we can go back. I feel like we can do something else with the time remaining. I think in this case I might be my world might be kind of an offshoot of an Arcturian lineage. That's, in the fourth density.
Okay. You said that you didn't need to be in the pulse because you had your own healing process. Let's go through that. You watched the pulse, and now you needed to go be healed and removed of the negative polarity you picked up by ending the other negative lives. Walk me through that process. What happens there?
So we go to another facility, and they're actually going to destroy the ship because it's no longer needed. And that takes care of any kind of energetic contamination of the ship itself. So we get off the ship, and each of us is going to kind of go through a hybrid technology healing, like in a healing pod, that also has a more spiritual component. So there's sort of a shaman type individual there, also operating the healing pod, who will help perform some careful realignment on a soul level while the physical vehicle is, biologically healed and realigned. And that's sufficient to achieve what's needed. Sort of the debriefing from the mission.
Okay, so what does this healing pod look like?
Looks kind of like the cockpit section of a fighter jet. You're sitting in it, and there's a bubble top that comes down, and you lie back, and there's various various stages of energy being applied and scanning and some focus work on different parts of the body, and it takes care of stuff. You may have stubbed your toe on the ship, didn't have anything to do with the polarity mission, but it's going to take care of all that anyway. So that's nice.
Okay. And how does it feel while all this is occurring?
It is... Well, it's kind of like getting a massage and how it can hurt, but it's like a good kind of hurt. You feel like it's helping. There's a relief. There's a release and fixing going on.
Okay. Anything else about that process you'd like to describe?
Well, and then you actually lose consciousness during it because the practitioner is now also working with you on a soul level, and it's not really like a life review, but they're going through what you've experienced and witnessed, and helping to realign any lasting effects of having to be destroying life like that.
Okay. All right. Let's move one more time to a time where something important is happening in that lifetime. And now you're there. Tell me about that.
Well, actually, interestingly, I think during that healing process, I decided not to go back into that body, perfectly good body that I think someone else could come into. I decided that was the end. So, decided to go back in between for whatever comes next.
Okay. And you took him to this last lifetime where he was again on a spaceship, but seeking out negative polarity. Why'd you show him that lifetime?
That was important for seeing that there is sometimes difficult work to be done, and it can't all be fluffy bunny love and light when they're truly negatively influenced individuals. And yet it's not without consequences either. It's very complicated, but negativity has to be dealt with in a certain way. It can't just be. Compassion isn't the only tool available, and it's not the appropriate tool for everything.
Okay. You showed him there towards the end the pulse happening within this galaxy. Clearly, that hasn't happened for us yet. So, in what relationship to this lifetime is that lifetime where he was on that ship?
Can you restate, please?
So, the lifetime where he's on that ship, where is it in his incarnational cycle, before or after this incarnation?
It's parallel.
Okay. All right. So he's here and he's also on that ship right now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you're his higher consciousness, so how many fragments are there out there operating right now?
Just 2.
Okay. All right. And at what density level do you exist at currently as his higher aspect?
6.
Okay. All right. And where is your originating collective at?
The Pleiades star cluster.
Okay. All right. So as this pulse, everyone here on Earth is very excited about that. We'd like to know what's the physical manifestations of this pulse going to be for us here on Earth?
It is the hypothesized solar eruption that some in alternative science and others in spiritual communities tend to expect, partly through scientific evidence, but also through the inevitability of information coming from higher sources into the collective.
Okay. So what kind of physical changes should we be expecting on the planet?
For the third density sphere, this results in a degree of destruction from the eruption itself, but also through the lead up with various natural changes, including earthquakes and volcanoes, and storms of different degrees of intensity, like the hurricanes or snowstorms of surprising rapidity of formation and intensity in progression.
Okay. So we're seeing some of that right now. Is that based on what's coming, or is that the leading edge of this, or what?
It's based on what's coming.
Okay. And I've had other clients tell me, like, time frames when this is going to be coming. So how much longer does he have to wait before he starts seeing this?
It's happening now, but it may reach a peak in the ultimate climax in 10 years.
10 years, okay. All right. In that lifetime where he's on that ship, we walk through a process where he destroys the negative ship. Can you just give us a little more info on that? What happened to the negative entities and that sort of thing?
The physical matter was completely dispersed, and the the information held within those consciousnesses were also completely erased and recycled for the sake of eliminating the influences of polarity further.
Okay. From your perspective, do you see polarity existing outside of this galaxy anywhere?
Not in the sense of true service to self, evil. Polarity as a more straightforward definition of polarity that is inevitable, which is the description of distinctiveness within, to degree within something that is ultimately the same in itself, such as the polarity of degrees of temperature in a thermometer. That is just a feature of logical physical construct. But polarity as an orientation away from the light does not exist outside of the galaxy.
Okay. Thank you.